What's up everybody, Peter McKinnon here and welcome back to yet another video. My friends, it is time to make the video. This is probably gonna be a longer one on my editing process. I do a lot of activity on Instagram. I'm always editing photos. I'm always posting photos to multiple accounts for those of you that follow all of them. Good on ya. But one of the things I'm always asked is how did you do that photo, or how did you do that composite or composite, or however you say it? How did you blend those things? Is that real rain? Is that fake snow? Is that real? What's your editing process look like? Do you use Lightroom or is it Photoshop? Is it Capture One? Like, is it all three? Is it like, what are you doing? So I figured I would take you through one of my photo edits, something that I've already posted. It's also important to say this video is kind of split between that and a lesson that is never delete photos in camera. So here's the photo that we're gonna edit today. This is a shot of Niagara Falls. That was a raw photo in camera. Looks terrible. Like, it looks so bad. I should have just thrown my camera over the edge and been like, new hobby, new profession, new career. That's the worst photo I've ever taken in time. It's really, really bad. I didn't delete it because I knew that I'd probably be able to fix it. So this video is both my editing process and kind of showing you how I would recover and, re-edit and salvage, that's the right word, salvage something that I would otherwise, or most people would otherwise, delete completely. Just see it and nope, done, format card, not gonna happen. So that's today's video. So we're gonna jump into the computer now and I'm gonna show you that process. Taking a photo that looked like this in camera and then making it look like this after the fact. Oh, it's pretty cool, right? It's not as hard as you think. We're gonna be using both Lightroom and Photoshop. So let's just start. Okay, so the first steps I like to do when editing a photo is your preliminary edits, your exposure, your contrast, highlights, shadows, all of those things, the whites and the blacks and the clarity and the dehaze, everything kind of up in your basic module, which is right here. I'll highlight this section. These are the things I like to mess around with just to see what the potential of the photo has. As an example, this photo is very blown out. If I just drag the exposure all the way down, you can see it does bring back detail. That kind of lets me know that this has potential. There is possibilities to fix this, to make it kind of something that I have a vision for. And that's the other thing. I like to have some kind of a roadmap, a vision for where I want the photo to go so that I know exactly the steps I need to do to get there, versus just kind of aimlessly wandering around the applications, sliding things, trying things. That's fun and that has its time, that has its place, but in this case, I want to make this a very snowy looking, end of the world, apocalyptic snowstorm, waterfall, dramatic photo. So I know what I need to do to get there, and it's going to be quite a lot of work. So I won't bore you with all of the edits as I go, but I'm gonna make them real quick and then I'll explain what I did and why I did them. The first things I'm gonna do is just make sure this is straight. That's always the first thing I do. And then I come down here and enable profile correction. It usually makes the edges a little brighter because it's basically taking the data from the EXIF file and telling Lightroom what lens you use to shoot it with. So it's unwarping the edges, and usually that brightens things up a little bit. So I like to do that right at the beginning so that when I mess with my exposure, I don't get it to where it's just perfect. And then I enable those profile corrections and it changes everything and I gotta go back and tweak. So I get that out of the way. And the first thing I'm gonna do is just start bringing down the exposure. And I do this stuff pretty fast. I bring down the highlights. Sometimes I bring up the shadows. Dehaze is gonna be my best friend in this case because there was a lot of mist and fog coming from, the waterfall itself. So if we just go ahead and dehaze, you can see how that's bringing back a ton. It's even bringing back some either posterization or details in the clouds. But the sky, full disclosure, we're gonna switch that out because there's just not enough happening in that to make it interesting. So that's one of the biggest problems with this photo, is how blown out and white the sky is. It's gotta go. Moving on, I don't think I have that exactly straight, so we're gonna move that back. Maybe bring the exposure back up a little bit, bring the whites up a little bit. And I like to play with the tone curve. So I wanna drop the shadows of that by using this tone curve. And then I wanna kind of bring back those highlights at the top here by making an S curve. That's kind of like your standard tone curve edit. Now the biggest problem I have with this photo is how green and stupid the water looks. It looks kind of like a murky swamp or like some halfway between a tropical destination. And if I were to leave it like this, people would be like, hey man, why is the water green? And I'd be like, I don't know, first day in Lightroom. So we're gonna go ahead and come down to the HSL sliders where we can control the individual colors of a photo. So in this case, we wanna wanna go over to aqua, and we wanna move that hue from in the middle closer to the blue side. So if we dragged it the opposite way, more towards green, you can see that it just looks even worse now. Now it looks like an actual swamp, like we're watching Bloodline and they're trying to find Danny. So we move this closer to the end, closer towards blue. That's starting to look like that mood that we want a little bit better. Then we can adjust the saturation and brightness for that. Come over to the blue tab and make sure we do the same thing by moving that slider towards the blue end, adjusting the saturation for that a little bit more, and the brightness. So those things right there kind of land the photo a little more where I want it to be. I'm gonna add some contrast, which will also cut down on the haze. Now the more contrast that we add also adds saturation. When you're putting contrast into a photo, it's also making it more colorful inherently. It's the same thing for when you add clarity. Clarity actually sucks the color out of a photo. So it's kind of like finding a good balance between the two. So I'm gonna add this clarity up a little bit. You can see how it's making that water look a little darker. We're gonna dehaze a little bit more, mess around with these. And once you've just kind of tweaked it to where you're happy, that's when I get into more of the creative stuff, more of the composite or composite, or however you want to say it. Those types of things that I do in Photoshop. But Lightroom, with regards to this photo right here and salvaging it, that's pretty good for now. I like to flip back and forth between the two programs without having to export the file over and over and over. The more you export a file and then bring it up in another editing software and then export it again and then import and export, you're just knocking the pegs of quality down further and further and further every time that you do that. So you want to try and only export once, which is when you're going to deliver the photo or post the photo. So in this case, let's say I'm happy right here. Maybe we'll just add a little more of like a blue tint to the entire photo like that. I'm going to send this over to Photoshop and replace the sky. We can right click, edit in Adobe Photoshop, and that's going to send it over and open it in our other application. So once that opens up on the screen here, anytime now, I could order a pizza before this actually opens. That's not a bad idea. That is how it's done. While we wait for Photoshop to open, let's have a little pizza break. Oh. Love the crust. Listen to this. Oh yeah. Let's go. Is this frozen?
2 hours later.
Oh, still waiting. Still waiting for it to open. I'm gonna hit 3 million before this opens.
The next day.
One of the first things I notice as an issue as an editor and having experience doing this is the separation between the white of the sky and the white of the falls is going to be very hard for Photoshop to mask it out with a nice clean line. You'll probably get the edges pretty close, and then when you click the rest of the way, it's just going to mask out the whole photo and it's not going to work. A really easy way to mask, sometimes it's not the most effective and it's not my favorite method, but if I'm having trouble, and I've tried masking a few times and it's not working for me, I'll actually use the eraser, but I'll make the brush huge so that it has a bit of a gradient. And this is what I mean by that. I've chosen a sky that I'd like to use to replace this sky with, and that is from the Black Sand Beach in Iceland. I feel like it matches the mood and it has that nice cloud. There's not too many clouds. It's not like a nice summer day or a tropical Maui sunset, which would not work at all. I mean, maybe that's what you're going for, and cool. But we go ahead and Command A is gonna select that photo, Command C is gonna copy it. We come back over to our tab here and Command V is going to paste it. What we're gonna do is drop the opacity of this a little bit, and we're gonna add a layer mask. So make sure that layer is selected, come down, add your layer mask, and then hit B for brush. Make sure your foreground is black and your background is white. If they're not, you can hit D and that's gonna replace those, and then X switches between black and white as your foreground. So make sure it's on black. Your brackets are gonna make that brush bigger, and then we're just gonna paint away. Let's make the opacity here low so we can see what we're doing. We're gonna paint away that foreground, and then when we get close to where the sky meets the waterfall, we're gonna make that brush size really, 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 really big, so it has a big radius, and we're gonna do one nice swoop across the photo, and that's it. Now when we bring that opacity back to 100, you can see the photo's actually missing right along the edge, but because the gradient looks good and it's white and it just blends into the clouds, you'd think it was just the sky. So that's kind of like your lazy man's way of masking out a photo when it's a little bit harder to do. Then I bring the brush size down much smaller and I paint back in those details that I don't want to lose, like right here. So we paint those back in. You can play around with the brush size. I want to make that foggy kind of up by the edge there. I am happy with that. So that looks good. Our sky is in. We did it the lazy man kind of fake eraser way, which is it's not the best practice. Definitely get good at masking, but I've got other videos on that. I'll link one here, and that's how you can use masking to replace the sky, which is very effective. This looks good. What I want to do though is get rid of how blue and tropical this water is. That still looks way too green, and I only want to get rid of that section. So we're gonna go ahead and click on the background layer, come over here to edit in quick mask mode. So we're gonna choose that, hit B for brush, and we're just gonna paint over that section right there. Now when we deselect this button, everything but that section is selected. So come right up to select, hit inverse, and now only that target section within those marching ants is selected. So if we come over to image, adjustments, hue saturation, and we bring down that saturation, not all the way because it would just look weird, but just enough that that blue isn't as vibrant. Like I'm fine with that right there. And then we change the hue to be a little more something matching. Like if you pump that back up, you can find the right hue that matches the photo, which is right about there. And then we bring the saturation down. I'm much happier with that. Command D deselects it. I am much happier with this photo. Okay, so the sky's looking good. We've desaturated that water. Now what I wanna do is add some snow to this. So you might be thinking, how do you add snow? And if you just get some kind of a document, like a PNG that has a transparent background, like some isolated snow on a black background, which I have just here, which you can find on different stock sites and Shutterstock and Adobe Stock, that kind of thing. And little preface, I will be coming out with a pack of my own, so keep an eye out for that. But if we Command A, Command C, and come back to our edit here and Command V to paste it, we hold down Alt and drag that out over this entire thing here and hit Enter. We drag that layer to the top. What we want to do is change it to screen for the blending mode. You can see now it looks like there's snow all over the place, but it's a little off. You might be thinking, what's off about this? And it's the fact that there's no motion blur on it. So if we come over to Filter, Blur, Motion Blur, maybe add something around 45. Now if we unpreview that, that's what it looks like without it. That's what it looks like with it. So it might be like a little bit much, maybe around 30, hit OK. And then I like to just drop that opacity just a little bit so it's not too in your face. So that's looking good right about there. Very happy with that. Now we're at a point where we can send this back to Lightroom, get our Instagram crop, figure out the rest of the edit, add a little bit more blue to the entire photo so it makes that sky blend a bit better, and we're just about done here. And all you have to do that, to send it back to Lightroom, is just save it in Photoshop. So just come up to File, hit Save or Command S, and once that's saved, when we come back into Lightroom now, you can see there's our shot with all of our snow, our new sky, our fixed water, but it's reset all the adjustments on the right side of our panel, our module here. So all I wanna do is just a couple extra tweaks. I wanna make it a little more blue so that that whole sky matches. I wanna add a little bit of clarity to suck out some of that, make it a little more dramatic, a little bit of contrast, slightly more blue. Maybe we'll even dehaze it to make it a little darker. Just ever so slightly. That might be a little bit too much. Let's back off on the blue there. A little bit too much. I'm gonna drop the saturation of the whole photo to kind of bring out that monochrome feel. So we're just about there. I'm happy with that. Now we come over to our crop tool. We're gonna select 4:5 by clicking original 4:5. That's the Instagram crop. I'm gonna drop it down a little bit because those edges of the sky are a little bit dark. Hit enter. Boom. That is our finished edit. And if you remember what it looked like before we started, it looked like that. That's what it looked like, and after all of our adjustments, now it looks like that. So if you want to do anything else, I probably could have made that snow a little bit less visible, dropped the opacity a little bit, maybe blurred it up a little bit more so it looks more like it's moving, but now we have a crazy looking weather pattern, wilderness, waterfall. It looks great. And that was a photo that I probably would have deleted. So that is my editing process for something like editing a garbage photo that you would have deleted in Lightroom and Photoshop using the dynamic link and replacing the sky and all of those fun things. That took a little while, didn't it? If you're still here, I'm impressed. I am impressed if you're still here. All right, guys, so that is the video. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you got something out of it. I hope it wasn't too confusing for you or too long. It can be a long process. Sometimes it's fast, sometimes it's not at all. I hope you enjoyed it. That is how to fix a photo and my editing process with Lightroom and Photoshop. So smash that like button if you like this video, 2019 style. Subscribe if you aren't already. Hit the bell, ring the bell, punch the bell, assault the bell, whatever you choose. I'd love you to be notified when I upload new videos because YouTube doesn't always like to do that. We gotta work together to make this happen, folks. Thanks so much for watching. See you guys next week. Peace.